Planned Parenthood is erasing founder Margaret Sanger's name over eugenics. But her views were known for decades. Planned Parenthood founder Margaret Sanger's racism and support for eugenics have always been inextricable from its mission. Removing her name from their New York clinic is a belated start, but without real atonement, it's a cop-out. The birth control behemoth announced on Tuesday it would strip Sanger's name from its Manhattan clinic, and it plans to petition the community board to remove the Margaret Sanger Square Street sign from the intersection where the building sits. However, such cosmetic reforms don't even begin to address Sanger's and Planned Parenthood's problematic history. Sanger founded Planned Parenthood in part to discourage reproduction among undesirables, the mentally and physically handicapped, but also the poor and black. Indeed, one of her most notorious efforts, the Negro Project, was focused, as the name suggests, on pushing birth control onto the black community in the South. She believed black people breed carelessly and disastrously and wanted to put a stop to it. And while her defenders have countered that those specific words were lifted from black author Du Bois, she expressed the same idea throughout her career. From the Negro Project arose perhaps her most controversial quote. "We don't want the word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population," Sanger wrote to fellow eugenicist and Procter & Gamble founder Clarence Gamble in 1939, explaining that her organization should train black ministers to straighten out any rebellious black people who get that idea into their heads, and black doctors to gain the trust of the targeted community. Sanger apologists have claimed this means the opposite of what it says, but there are plenty of words she could have used other than rebellious if she had meant to imply such extermination was an incorrect interpretation of her organization's contraception efforts. Those apologists also argue that eugenics was all the rage in those pre-World War II days, before the term conjured up Nazi medical experiments, insisting Sanger was merely a product of her time. But the contraception pioneer who spoke before the Ku Klux Klan and believed reproduction should require a government-issued permit had more than a passing trendy appetite for the practice. She praised Germany's sterilization program back in 1934, stating she admired the courage of a government that takes a stand on sterilization of the unfit, and while she clarified that unfit should not refer to race or religion, that was a relatively new position for the Planned Parenthood founder. Just over a decade previously, she'd written Negroes and Southern Europeans are mentally inferior to native-born Americans. Nor was her list of gene pool disqualifiers limited to inborn characteristics. In 1918, she called for the poverty-stricken classes to be forcibly sterilized if they would not limit their reproduction voluntarily, stating, "All of our problems are the result of overbreeding among the working class." There's something to be said for empowering women to control their fertility. Of course, little of the social progress women have made in the intervening decades would have been possible if they were forever barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. But Sanger was quite open about weaponizing birth control for eugenic purposes. This eugenicist current at the heart of PP did not die with Sanger, though the defeat of the Nazis forced its proponents to shroud it in a more socially acceptable vocabulary. The organization began advocating for the liberalization and ultimately repeal of abortion laws under the guidance of board members like population control enthusiast William Gates Sr., father of fellow population control enthusiast and Microsoft billionaire Bill Gates. Planned Parenthood is often accused of citing its clinics in low-income and black neighborhoods in order to prey on these communities, and more black babies are aborted in New York City than are actually born, a disturbing statistic, no matter how much one believes in a woman's right to control what happens in her womb. Nor is the compulsory sterilization Sanger advocated for a thing of the past. While the days when 60,000 Americans were medically sterilized amid the nation's eugenics mania are over, some of those laws remain on the books, covering for state-sponsored sterilization of female prison inmates, most of whom are black or Hispanic. To their credit, PP appears to understand that removing Sanger's name is at once long overdue and utterly insufficient to address its history. In a press release issued on Tuesday, the group explained it is already a year into a community-assisted reckoning with its racist and eugenicist past, a program it has dubbed Reviving Radical, intended to shape a new vision for Planned Parenthood's relationship in the community, and said that renaming the clinic is part and parcel of a larger reform process. Unfortunately, the program's description reeks of the cosmetic tweaks many organizations have been deploying in the past weeks to recast themselves as woke without significantly altering problematic business practices. Alongside vague, if encouraging, pledges to reckon with Planned Parenthood's legacy and contributions to historical reproductive harm within communities of color, there's white fragility-style babble like divest from and dismantle white-dominant organizational cultural norms and values and center communities of color voice, experience and knowledge of self. The trend of superficial reckoning sparked by the Black Lives Matter movement has led to a lot of hasty renaming, largely unaccompanied by a deeper examination of the history being memory hold. This does a disservice both to the minority groups in whose name this whitewashing is performed and to the future generations who will have to live with the fallout from this sloppy revisionism. If Planned Parenthood is serious about reconciling its eugenicist roots with a genuine desire to help women take control of their lives by controlling their fertility, it has an opportunity to air its dirty laundry, atone for its crimes against black and poor women, and serve as an example for other groups who would rather learn from the past than run from it. Simply cancelling Margaret Sanger and declaring mission accomplished is not enough. Lest we forget, Rolling Stone writer recently said that saying pro-life is racist and should be banned. Staying woke on what's acceptable and what's racist is an ongoing process of shifting standards, as a Rolling Stone writer proved with the latest addition to terms that have surprisingly been branded as bigotry. Pro-life. Jamal Smith, a senior writer who covers the intersection of politics and identity for the magazine, opined on Twitter Wednesday that the term pro-life deserves to be banished, along with other recently outlawed characters and words. A wave of racial sensitivity brought on by the Black Lives Matter protest movement has already brought down decades-old consumer products brands such as Uncle Ben's Rice and forced the renaming of Washington's NFL franchise. The moniker pro-life, so often used in the service of not just misogyny but also racism, should be retired right along with Aunt Jemima and the Redskins team name, Smith wrote. Smith took his stand in response to a tweet by William Barber II, a progressive political activist. Barber pointed out what he saw as hypocrisy by Republican governors who speak out against abortion but allegedly fail to protect their state's residents from the COVID-19 pandemic. Ironically, the governors most willing to watch their citizens die are the ones who have used pro-life rhetoric to compel people of faith to support the narrow interests of corporate greed and white political power, Barber said. COVID has revealed how the pro-life movement is killing us. Abortion is a reliably hot and divisive issue in U.S. politics. The element of race is often brought into the debate. While African Americans make up 13% of the U.S. population, black women account for 36% of abortion patients, on par with the larger Hispanic population, according to data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. In New York City, according to some reports, there are more black babies aborted each year than born. Anti-abortion activists often point out that Planned Parenthood, the largest U.S. abortion provider, was founded by eugenicist Margaret Sanger, who has been accused of anti-black racism. Abortion proponents have countered that pro-life politicians hypocritically oppose the loss of black lives while failing to take actions that would improve infant mortality, increase access to healthcare, and reduce incarceration of African Americans. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like and share this video. Be well and until next time.